Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to projectCD.Chronicles. I've finished updating the system and installing some new software, and as you can see today, HeliumOS has reached 3,149 clicks on DistroWatch, making it currently one of the most popular, reliable, and well-regarded distributions. However, something in particular truly caught my attention. There are so many, indeed, a really huge number of distributions, as you can clearly see within the vast Linux landscape, but many of them still regrettably go unnoticed, and even though they are reviewed, they ultimately end up getting much less attention. In today's video, I wanted to show you exactly 5 distros that I consider, so to speak, minor distros, although minor isn't really the right word. Let's say 5 lesser known distros. I'll introduce them to you, and then depending on the comments for the distro that sparks the most interest, we could do a real installation and maybe also take a closer look at all the features of that particular distribution. Stay with me until the end of the video because I'll be showing you the 5 least known distributions in the Linux world. Let's start with the first one, 4MX Linux, which we can find here on DistroWatch. By the way, I think it was ranked 84th on the list. This distro is truly unique because it's minimalist. It's an independent distribution, as the word here suggests, and it's designed for those who want a lightweight yet complete operating system. And let's say if you have an old PC and you want to bring it back to life, this distribution is ideal for you because, as we'll see, it has truly cutting-edge minimal requirements. As you can clearly see here, let's now proceed directly to the official MX Linux distribution page. Here one might say it regrettably doesn't truly do complete justice to its own remarkable distribution, perhaps not fully showcasing its extensive capabilities and unique features. I wanted to show you a few more images, but I wanted to focus on these 4 that give it its identity, on these 4 definitions of the distribution. MX Linux is an independent distribution, and by the way, it was created in Poland. It's based on Debian. There are also derivatives from Arch or other families, and its name comes from 4M. See here? This part right here, this is exactly the characteristic of the distribution, maintenance. So we have a whole range of tools for backup, antivirus, and data recovery. Multimedia, so we have full audio and video support, even for DVDs. We also find this section about mini servers, which includes ready-to-use LAMP servers and so on. And pay attention. Mystery means it has a whole collection, which I also like, of retro games like Dune, Axel, and Brutal Chess. By the way, it also includes emulators for Atari. Very, very interesting. Here, I hadn't really highlighted it before, but now I've increased the desktop font, and basically this is a summary of what I just told you. A small demo of the M for Linux service run in a BusyBox is here. This is the blog, and then there is a whole series of information about the release. Anyway, basically we have support for Bakash and file systems, excellent support for Bluetooth, and according to what is written here in the blog, there are also significant tools and software specifically dedicated to graphics. In particular, I wanted to point out, since I read it somewhere and now I'll retrieve it here, that it also has Intel VAPI drivers ready for installation on the live CD, the M for Linux server, and here we also find other information, EB interface as I mentioned, and so on. We can go back to our DistroWatch, but basically I prefer to stay here for now and then, in any case wrap up with this distribution. However, it is equipped, as we can also see in this section, with all the common software like LibreOffice, Firefox, Chrome, and as I mentioned, multimedia servers. We also find Audacious, which I read about, VLC, SM Player, and so on. And notice, since this distro, as I can probably already show you here, is also partly oriented towards retro gaming, it uses a component of Win1011 that is already installed. What's really remarkable here, as I mentioned, is the app server, MySQL, and so on, a whole series of features. Of course, if you're interested, we can go into more detail about it later. Let's get back to us and the disk requirements, which are nothing less than 128 megabytes of RAM minimum, and that's something incredible even today. and a slightly higher amount of RAM if you want to use some of the more specialized packages available on CD or DVD. 128 MB is the minimum recommended just for the server tar disk installation. Well, I'd say this truly gives us a good overview of what this particular distro is and some of its key features, but now let's smoothly move on to the second, perhaps even more interesting and certainly lesser known distro. All right, let's continue our brief tour of lesser known distributions with the second one, which is HeliumOS. Here, I've enlarged it so you can see it better. Basically, of course, it's a Linux distribution specifically originating from AlmaLinux, initially CentOS Stream and later AlmaLinux. It has an x86-64 architecture and runs KDE Plasma. It's worth noting that this is still an active distribution. As I mentioned earlier, it was originally based on CentOS Stream and then later on AlmaLinux. It has a release cycle of about 5 years, and there's also a special user support that extends up to 10 years, so it's long-term support. Among other things here, we have additional features. As I was saying, Helium is an atomic and bootable distribution which is built upon, as I mentioned, the AlmaLinux desktop. All right, let's go to the main page of the distribution. HeliumOS, in this case, the 9 series is still in alpha, while the 10 series is currently in beta development. It has migrated from KDE, which I mentioned earlier, having previously used GNOME because KDE, specifically Plasma in this case, was considered more mature and more complete. You can also find a great deal more comprehensive information through the official blog and on the dedicated how-to page for extensive support and various detailed debug records. I've meticulously listed some of the distribution's key features. It inherently uses bootc as a robust atomic update system and effectively employs container images to ensure truly reliable upgrades and absolutely safe rollbacks. As for the pre-installed software, I took a very close look, and here we have quite a few pre-configured and highly useful tools, including those specifically aimed at enhancing the gaming experience, such as the widely popular Steam platform and therefore its essential compatibility layer, Proton, and most notably, the incredibly versatile application known as Bottles, Moshimoy. I'll definitely do a more in-depth and comprehensive review of Bottles later on, although I've already seen several excellent reviews available online. Bottles fundamentally allows you to effortlessly create small, isolated containers of either wine team or standard wine environments, making it significantly and remarkably much easier to install and run all those various Windows-related applications and supports that aren't yet natively compatible or haven't been officially ported over to the specific Linux distributions. It's truly quite an ingenious and remarkably effective solution for seamlessly running a wide array of Windows games, or even, so to speak, managing and operating entire Windows virtual machines directly within the confines of this particular distribution. Just a little more information. Discover is installed, which is essentially a flat pack, and we have software access via Sandbox through this flat pack. It allows for Debian's legacy installations, as I mentioned before. I wanted to talk to you about bootable containers, we've already talked about containers and development security and functionality. Obviously, like many other distros, it supports secure boot, but this is something I found mentioned in the information about the Helium 10 beta, and in particular, we have nothing less than native support for NVIDIA CPUs, so they're probably already included in the distribution from the ISOs we'll be downloading. Well, what can I say? I jumped around a bit quickly from one topic to another, but we'll come back to this distribution if there's interest in the comments. This is the part I mentioned earlier a few minutes ago. What can I say? Well, it definitely has some strong points because it offers atomic updates that are safe and reliable, which is already important. As I mentioned, it has an extended 10-year support cycle, a now mature KDE Plasma environment, sandboxing software with Flexbox, which shouldn't be underestimated, compatibility with most Windows games and Linux containers, another strong point, support for recent hardware, secure boot, and definitely NVIDIA GPU support. These are undoubtedly the pros. As for the cons, well, at the moment we're still dealing with what's essentially an alpha beta version, so it's not completely stable yet. And as I mentioned earlier, this distro has switched to KDE from what used to be the GNOME desktop. The community, the public, clearly, since this is an almost invisible distro, is still very, very small. And well, obviously, HeliumOS is currently in a phase of transition, so to speak, aiming for stability in order to clearly reach its strengths in the future. All right, that's all. Let's move on to our third little known distro. All right, let's get back to it with this next distribution, the third of the lesser known ones, Dimitri's Zemos. I hope that's the correct pronunciation. Greek, this release, July 2025. Well, what can I say? Slackel is a distribution developed in Greece precisely by Dimitris, as I just mentioned, and its technical foundation is, well, and here you can find the full description based on Slackware. And specifically in the distro and in its description, some tools are borrowed from Salix OS. It's, let's say, a comprehensive distribution that is fully and completely compatible with Slackware, so it's truly one of those exceptionally robust Linux distros, but it offers the significant advantage of utilizing the current, most recent Slackware version, meaning the very latest one available, thereby ensuring, let's say, the most thoroughly up-to-date and current packages for optimal performance and stability. We can go straight to this, which is the official project page for this particular operating system. We can clearly see that it is readily available with two distinct and alternative desktop environments, OpenBox and Mate. As for this here, maybe we can also zoom in, okay? The downloads, of course, are readily available as traditional ISO and live ISO images, which you can then conveniently use to install the operating system via a USB drive. The included desktop environments are OpenBox, Mate, and we also find the well-known and robust KDE desktop environment as well, offering a comprehensive selection for users. And within this distro, it's also possible to install Fluxbox. By the way, besides the official website, which is DistroWatch, and their Mastodon page, which is basically their official blog, I can clearly show you a few other interesting and noteworthy features that I've personally noticed. But as I already mentioned, it's fundamentally based on Slackware Current. Clearly, it has everything you'd expect from a comprehensive graphical installer, and in particular, the highly intuitive Sly, okay? And a whole comprehensive range of graphical user interface GUI tools are thoughtfully included for the seamless updating and installing of both software packages and the actual core software within the distribution itself and so on. Here, of course, it is much more extensive and feature rich, and I highly recommend that you take the time to go and thoroughly check out Mastodon, Social, Slack, Hell if you are indeed interested in exploring further. Well, what else can I possibly say about this remarkable system? Let's wrap it up here. Slackwell is undoubtedly a rather niche distribution, but it certainly possesses many interesting and unique features for specific types of users. I could highlight a few additional points that are perhaps more significantly important when it comes to understanding Slackware, its philosophy, and its practical applications. As I mentioned, the target audience is expert or semi-expert users, or in any case, people who are familiar with Slackware or who want to learn it but are looking for a slightly more user-friendly system. It's suitable for those users who want to stay in the Slackware world, but as I mentioned earlier, want easier access to the current branch and perhaps to the latest updates and packages. Again, still talking about Slackware. For those individuals who truly desire a lightweight desktop computing experience, because it also comprehensively includes a whole and extensive range of highly efficient and lightweight desktop environments available for selection. There is the possibility, as I read, to use it on somewhat older hardware. And as with every distribution, you can use it as a live CD or directly from a USB stick. I haven't really explicitly listed the specific pros and cons, but rather I've simply put together a comprehensive and general overview of what the primary and most important features of the Slackware operating system truly are. That's all. All right, next, as with the other various Linux distributions I came across this very morning, let's take a comprehensive look at SMS, specifically SME Server, which is a system I have also thoroughly researched and investigated in detail. It's not really a distribution for everyone because it's mainly designed for small to medium-sized businesses. Previously, it was known as SME Server and Gateway. It's clearly an open source Linux distribution, not for the end user, but mainly for small and medium sized businesses. As we can see here, Kuzali, it's developed by the Kuzali Foundation, and the latest release, by the way, which was released on September 14th, 2022, is codenamed Justine. This distribution is essentially based on CentOS and therefore has a very high compatibility with Red Hat 7. Its features and strengths are undoubtedly installation and administration. Moreover, as I was reading here, less than 20 minutes, a basic installation and configuration takes less than 20 minutes to be up and running thanks to a secure web interface and centralized administration. Clearly, remote support is provided via SSH, PVTP, and VPN. Please check out the short video that I have recently made, which is especially about various network protocols, specifically the 12 essential protocols that you absolutely need to know and understand. Again, simple and easy to set up. It's secure and stable. So it's a firewall based on IP tables and multi-layer with granular ACLs. But of course, you can find this information on the website. As for its comprehensive network functionalities and its primary intended use, this device effectively works as a robust router gateway for the entire local area network, or LAN, and of course it fully supports all the various and diverse protocols and advanced network features that are essential for modern connectivity. In particular, I found it here, well, I'll look for it again later, ISP point-to-point over Ethernet, ISDN, DSL, and also support for analog modems. A few more important details: we have comprehensive webmail access securely provided through Horde with robust SSL encryption ensuring private and protected communications. We also offer efficient management of a limited number of user accounts, providing administrative control. And of course, there's the classic Samba file sharing protocol, widely used for seamlessly sharing various files over the network within both Windows and macOS environments. Obviously, we're not going to go over all the various features here. You can check those out yourselves if you're interested, since this is essentially a very niche distribution. To sum up, SME Server is ideal, as I mentioned, for small businesses with between 50 and 100 users, and also for anyone who wants to centralize all their IT services, especially email, file sharing, web, backup, and security within a single server. That's basically the By the way, I was just looking here. I mentioned earlier that the last release was in 2022, but in fact, there's a new release from just a few days ago, still in beta, of SME Server, dated July 25th, 2025. All right, let's move on to our last little known distribution. All right, the last distribution that we've considered, and in this case, you've already seen it, Liya, I hope that's how it's pronounced, is a rolling release distribution based on Arch Linux, with direct access to the official Arch repositories and the Arch user repository, AUR, without any additional complex configurations. Let's say this distribution comes in two different, so to speak, ISOs. The first is the V2, and it's designed for older computers, still the old AMDs or even the old Intels, so it's a dedicated distro. But we also have a comprehensive distribution, so a particular version based entirely on what's commonly called V3, which is specifically optimized for the much newer and more advanced CPUs currently available on the market. And all the various packages have also been recompiled specifically to achieve the highest possible performance for these architectures. I already talked about this. Maybe let me enlarge it again, give you a bit more information. Anyway, optimized Web v3, I mentioned it to you before. User interface and tools are, of course, all included. It includes a graphical installation via Calamares and a software center through Pacman for installing applications with graphical interfaces. What else can I say? The default applications included are Brev, OnlyOffice, and TimeShift. By the way, I should mention that CacheOS, well, here Cache-O browser has been deprecated and it's gone back, let's say, to its roots on CacheOS with our good old Firefox. Here it says, well, built for everyone, for developers, students, and thinkers. The supported environments are Cinnamon and Mate. Although I still think that since it's based on Arch, there's actually a wide range of desktops you can install, as well as software that you can, let's say, install as packages on this system. Obviously, it does have its strengths, but also some weaknesses, both in terms of updates. The last one, if I'm not mistaken, was from last year, but let me check that more closely. And of course, also the community, where the community is clearly still developing, and so the support is also relatively limited. All right, I'd say there's nothing more to add except to give a brief summary of what we've already discussed. Strengths, undoubtedly, it's based on Arch. Another strength is, of course, that it's based on Calamares. Strengths, ISOs optimized for both old and modern CPUs. Pacman clearly pre-installed. It comes with Office tools and many other things I've already mentioned, all pre-installed. It doesn't have bloatware, unlike some other distributions, and above all, it doesn't support telemetry, so your privacy is definitely respected. Well, clearly, like all distributions of this kind, what is the question that we ask ourselves? Clearly, its support community is limited, and so the long-term reliability can be uncertain precisely because of the risk of abandonment. But if someone is already coming from Arch or from KCOS, I don't think there's really a significant transition needed to move users from Arch to LIA. In any case, it is undoubtedly a distro that deserves at least to be considered for these features. What else can I say? There are really so many. As you can see, we've looked at some of the lesser known ones. If you're interested in any of them, we can take a closer look. Maybe install them on a virtual machine or even on actual hardware. We'll go and test their features a bit more, depending also on your comments. And what else can I say? We'll see each other on the channel soon with a new review, maybe of some software, a distro, or a short tutorial about our beloved Penguin. Well, for those who stayed, for the bravest ones, for those who have stayed with me up to this point, I thank you, and I'll see you next time. Claudio.